Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Glad you are back. I would like to start the continuation of the Animals Committee 31 meeting. I won't make a long introduction. I think we know what we have to do. We have still a lot of topics on our plate. If the Secretariat wants to take the floor for some initial comments or introductions, then I will pass the floor to the Secretariat. Secretariat, you have the floor. We can't hear you. Okay. So it seems we will wait until we see what. Okay. So we can go on. I don't think Secretariat has important messages to give. So I will start by shortly saying how we will proceed. First, I will look at the executive summaries. So AC 31, Sum 1 and Sum 2. Then we will come back to the item that we left unfinished at the second day meeting, which concerns the quotas for leopard hunting trophies. Then we will go through the working group reports. And then we will continue with the items that we haven't been touching upon yet. So with this, I would like to as I did yesterday, I would like to make clear what the executive summary is and what is the difference to the summary record. We had some parties and also observers asking whether to introduce their comments into the executive summary that we have circulated. So I think it is important to make the distinction between these two documents. So I would refer you all to Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure of the Animals Committees. It explains that the executive summary contains the decisions of the committee, which come into effect as soon as the executive summary is endorsed. On the other hand, the summary record, which is produced later within 40 working days of the meeting, for each agenda item, this document will contain a short statement indicating the main points of the discussion, the text indicating the decision that was made as it appears in the executive summary, and the text of any statement provided by any member, acting members, alternate members, or the observer from any party that was read into the record during the meeting. The participants in the debate shall also be included at the end of each topic. So this all includes when we formed working groups. So if there are parties or observers which joined the working group after we have struck the working group, after I have read out all the participants, they will be added in the document of the working group and in the summary record. So don't worry, you will be recorded, but we can only look at what has been decided in the meeting itself. So with these introductory words, I would like you to turn to AC 31 Sum 1, the executive summary of the meeting on the 31st of May. And I would open the floor for any comments or suggestions on that document. I see North America has asked for the floor, so Ezekiel, you have the floor.
Good day to everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a small comment on page 2 on item 28 on African lions. I don't know if by mistake I was named to be part of this group on lions as representative of North America, but that was not the case. So I request to be deleted. I didn't participate. So same will happen when we reach same document. Thank you.
Thank you, Ezekiel. So we will strike out your participation there. Any other comments? I don't see any, so we adopt this summary record, this executive summary of the first day of the meeting. Then I would like to turn to AC31 Sum 2. And I would like to open the floor for any comments. I see the AC nomenclature specialist has asked for the floor. Peter Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. With regard to Summary 2, item 14.3 on page 4, I urge that the summary record use the currently adopted name for CITES purposes for the reticulated python being Python reticulatus. A nomenclature update of this name to Malayo python is among the recommendations that was agreed in the nomenclature working group, but will at the earliest be adopted at COP19. And until that time, we should use the name Python reticulatus in CITES documentation. Thank you.
Thank you, nomenclature specialist. I think we have to be clear here, and we will change that in the wording. Just to note, if Malaysia has used that name, then it is up to Malaysia to change it in the document itself if they want to do so. But I think in the summary record we can use the original, the correct nomenclature name. So we will change that to Python reticulatus. I see the United States has asked for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two minor edits or small edits on item 24, marine turtles. If you go to paragraph A at the bottom of that sentence where it says parties to notification number 2020/015, I believe that should be written as 035, not 15.
Okay, we will check on that. Thank you very much. Yep.
And one last little thing is if you go up to item 23, precious corals, the first sentence there says, the committee noted the information provided in document AC31, document 23, and its addendum, and agreed to, the word to is missing, the recommendations.
Sorry, United States, where is that?
So 23, precious corals.
Okay, on page
on
1.
The very,
okay.
Yes, on the very first
okay.
page. And the very first line, basically the second line down, it says the recommendations. It should say to the recommendations. Agreed to the recommendations.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, United States. So I don't see anybody else asking for the floor. So the Animals Committee adopts Executive Summary AC31 Sum 2 with the amendments proposed by the United States and the nomenclature specialist of the Animals Committee. I see Europe has asked for the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and a good afternoon to all. We also have two, hopefully minor suggestions. One is on agenda item 14, which relates to the two reports by Malaysia. We would like to suggest that we insert similar wording on what the noting the documents means, as we have already agreed yesterday, as suggested by the US. So I would suggest that we use exactly the same wording, that that note does not mean agreeing to the documents, to the content. So we can use exactly the same language. And then my second comment is on the issue just above, on Bangai cardinal fish. As the EU, we suggested, and Indonesia agreed to having this case presented to the workshop on marine ornamental fishes. So we hope it should be possible to add at the very end of the sentence which is encouraging Indonesia to continue its work to promote conservation, management, and sustainable trade in Banggai cardinal fish, to add and to present this case to the technical workshop on marine ornamental fishes envisaged in decision 18296.
Can you repeat that, please?
So we would add at the end of the sentence, and to present this case to the technical workshop on marine ornamental fishes envisaged in decision 18296.
Envisaged under?
Under decision 18296.
Okay. Okay.
And I think I also have the US wording if you would need it on the first item on explaining what to note means. I think the US suggested yesterday that we use the language, given that the Animals Committee was not provided an opportunity for input or discussion of these documents, it would be plural. It was requested that noting these documents did not imply agreement or endorsement.
Thank you, Europe. Concerning your last point, I do think that this is something that should go into the summary record when we explain the whole issue. I don't think that it is necessary to put it in here, but it will certainly be put into the summary record where it is explained, because I think this document should only contain what has been decided, and explanations on what that means. I think that shouldn't be put in the summary, in the executive summary, but rather in the summary record. So I would propose that your wording will be taken into the summary record for sure. So with this, I propose that the Animals Committee adopts AC31 Sum 2 with the changes proposed as amended by the United States, the nomenclature specialist, and the representative of Europe. Okay. With this, I close that item. I would then come now to the document that we haven't been finishing on Tuesday, the 1st of June. It concerns quotas for leopard hunting trophies under decision 18167 and 18168. And it is AC 31 Doc 29.2 and the addendum. Document 29.2 and its annexes present information from Botswana, the Central African Republic, and Ethiopia on their review of their leopard hunting quotas contained in Resolution Conf 1014 Ref Cop 16 on quotas for leopard hunting trophies and skins for personal use. These range states were asked to consider whether their quotas are set at levels which are non-detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. The Animals Committee is to consider whether their quotas are set at levels which are non-detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. Animals Committee is also to consider the information provided by the 3 leopard range states and, if necessary, make any recommendations to the range states and the Standing Committee. The members of the Animals Committee have reviewed the information provided by Botswana, the Central African Republic, and Ethiopia, and our preliminary conclusions have been put into document AC31 Inf 17 as follows. Concerning the proposed reduction of the quota for leopards from Ethiopia, the Animals Committee considered that the proposed reduction of the quota from 200 to a quota of 20 leopard hunting trophies and skins for personal use is reasonable and not detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild, and therefore can be supported. Concerning the proposed retention of the quota for leopards from Central African Republic, the Animals Committee considered that the quota of 40 leopard hunting trophies and skins for personal use seems to be high, but still not detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild, and can therefore also be supported. One member would have liked to see a lowering of the quota. Concerning the proposed retention of the quota for leopards from Botswana, the Animals Committee could not come to a unanimous conclusion, and some members considered that the documentation submitted by Botswana requesting the retention of the quota of 130 leopards raised several questions that would have to be addressed by Botswana before they could recommend the retention of that quota at this level. At our meeting of 1st June, we could not finalize the recommendations from the AC. In relation to the maintenance of the quota of 130 leopards proposed by Botswana, the AC had raised these concerns in INFDoc 17, as just mentioned before. Botswana had replied to these concerns with INFDoc 20. However, the Animals Committee had not had the time to really consider this reply on June 1st. Since then, the Animals Committee has reconsidered the issue and has come to the conclusion to agree that the maintenance of the quota of 130 leopards is set at levels which do not threaten the survival of the species in the wild. Our colleague, the member from Oceania, was still concerned about the high level, consisting of 3% of the total estimated population, but did not want to break the consensus reached within the Animals Committee, but would like to have his concerns reflected in the summary record of the meeting. The Animals Committee therefore proposes the following recommendations. The Animals Committee informs the Standing Committee that it considers the quotas for leopards for the Central African Republic and Botswana, as mentioned in Resolution Conf 1014 Ref Cop 16, to be set at levels which are non-detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. And the Animals Committee informs the Standing Committee that for Ethiopia it considers the proposed reduction of the quota for leopards in Resolution Conf 1014 Ref Cop 16 to 20 trophies to be set at levels which are non-detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. I would now open the floor for any comments of these proposed recommendations. First, members of the committee. I don't see any asking for the floor. Then observer parties. I see Israel. Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for the summary. We note that Oceania was a member of the Animals Committee that seemed to feel that the 130 quota is still too high, and Israel would like to associate themselves with this comment by the Oceania. We don't feel that the scientific evidence of the population studies by Botswana seem to support this higher quota, and at this time we would wish to see if there's still any way of considering the proposal by the U.S. of putting some temporary suspension, at least until further population studies are completed, as was mentioned earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. I see the UK has asked for the floor. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we're grateful for the information provided by the three range states, and are also pleased to see the changes to the quotas suggested by Ethiopia to make their quotas more proportionate to their NDF findings and actual levels of trade. I think we can go along with the recommendations of the committee. I think we assume that any proposed changes in quotas will have to be submitted by the relevant parties to COP19 for consideration, as required by the COP 921. I think we also hope that in future that the guidance being referred to in document 29.2 under preparation by IUCN on leopard hunting trophies can be used to inform future reviews of these quotas once this guidance has been presumably considered by the committee. I think a final general comment, Chair, is, we still note that there is a significant difference in some cases between some of the quotas in ResComp 1014 and actual levels of trade as justified by country NDF. In such cases, I think we have to say we're not clear what purpose really the COP-approved quotas are fulfilling in those circumstances. But that's just a broader general comment, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. Thank you, Vin. I see Zimbabwe has asked for the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, very well.
Thank you. Zimbabwe would like to support the recommendations by the Chair and the Animals Committee. I'm sure from the document that was submitted by Botswana, it showed that they have a population of over 4,000 leopards, and they are only harvesting about 3% of the population. So, and they are harvesting less than 50. While their quota is 130, their offtake has been, when they harvested, it's less than 50. And I want to highlight that when we have what we call CITES quota, it's just a guidance to what can be harvested in any population. And we do adaptive management, and the aim is not to harvest 130 leopards, but to adaptively manage. So I want to support the idea that we maintain the 134 leopards. They do adaptive management, and they also do country-specific NDF for the harvesting of the leopards. And we would want it noted that when we have a quota, a CITES quota, we do not aim to harvest the full quota. We do adaptive management. We only harvest trophy animals, and this does not have any detriment impact on the remaining wild population. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I see the North American representative has asked for the floor. So, Ezekiel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to express the support of the North American region on your proposal and quotas to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, North America. I see Botswana has asked for the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me that side?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Botswana, I would like to say Botswana uses adaptive management as the basis for its wildlife management actions, which are guided primarily by the Wildlife Conservation and National Parks Act of 1992 and the Wildlife Policy of 2013. And monitoring is the key aspect, and in any species can be managed without knowing the exact population. And Botswana has made it clear that it has no intent to raise its internal leopard quota at this time, before any further study on and national planning. And its CITES quota is based on scientifically recognized thresholds. And allocated quotas have always been lower than the CITES quota because it has always been the understanding of Botswana that annual export quota is not a target, and there is no need for a CITES quota to be fully used, according to a resolution COMP 14.7, Rev COP 15. Internal quotas are set at very low conservative levels. And Botswana has not had any spot hunting from 2014 to 2021. So there is no way that the population could have declined, as only a few leopards have been killed in human-wildlife conflict incidents. And we as Botswana thank the Animals Committee members for the recognition of our exemplary management system, and we kindly request that this intervention be included in the summary records of the meeting. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Botswana. I see the representative from Africa, Panta Kasoma, you have the floor.
Chair, sorry I was a bit late. I've got, as usual, some connectivity problems.
But it's good you are here now.
Yes, I'm here now, Chair. Basically, I think, as I said I mentioned in my email to you, I didn't see much objection to Botswana's request from our region, and therefore, I wish to express our support for their request to maintain 130 leopards per year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, representative of Africa. So I see now the other representative from Africa, Apollinaire Mensa.
Greetings, Chair. Greetings, everyone. As I have already had the opportunity to say, I agree with what our Secretariat has said. We think we should stick to decisions made rather than reopening discussions. Thank you, sir.
I see United States, and then I will give the floor to two observers, and then I will conclude. I see United States, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States supports the Chair's recommendations on the way forward. I wanted to clarify, though, that Israel said the United States suggested a suspension. We did not. We'd like that noted in the summary record. We had concerns when we came to this meeting, but after hearing the way Botswana responded and how they managed the species, those concerns were addressed. And we're very encouraged by the work that's currently going on in Botswana for leopards. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. So I will give the floor to WWF and then CIC, and then I will close the list. WWF.
Thank you. We would just like to associate ourselves with the last comment of the United Kingdom. There is a huge discrepancy between the quotas in the resolution and the actual amount exported at the end. And it does call into question what the merit of the resolution as it currently stands is. With regard to Botswana's quota, we share some of the doubts expressed by the representative of Oceania, but in fairness to Botswana, we share some of those doubts about some of the quotas from other parties as well. And accepting the fact that they are not actually used, we just wonder if the resolution is effectively giving an air of authority or rigor to quotas that would certainly be considered unsustainable if they were used to the full. And we would encourage the Animals Committee to reflect on that point in the final recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Then the CIC.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm making this intervention on behalf of the CIC, as well as 6 other organisations whose details I will be including in the chat. So the documentation submitted by Botswana does clearly demonstrate that the leopard populations of this range state are not only stable, but are very well managed. Hence, we are pleased to note that they have responded to the request and that reviewed annual quotas are set at levels which are de minimums and non-detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. We were surprised at the tone of the last-minute concerns raised by the Animal Committee in InfDoc 17. Nevertheless, Botswana swiftly and adequately responded to the questions raised. Here it must be emphasised that current estimates of leopard population size at national, regional or range-wide scales are likely an underestimate. And given the elusive nature of the species and its wide-ranging biology, population estimates at such scales will have wide confidence intervals from a management perspective. So thus the adaptive management frameworks shall be used basing management decisions on reliable estimates of population trends. And I must emphasize these are trends. So Botswana has an exemplary leopard management strategy using adaptive management, exceptional monitoring practices, and a history of conservative quota allocations. And they should instead be complemented for this and their quota thus confirmed as per the decision presented here today. So the total quota is within the 3% threshold that's indicated by the scientific literature. And further to this, it should be noted that the population estimate is already very conservative. So in this regard, we also welcome the interventions made today by representatives of North America and Africa, and also by Zimbabwe and Botswana. So further, we note that under Decision 18.169, the Secretariat, in cooperation with range states and relevant experts, shall develop guidance that can assist parties in the preparation of non-detriment findings for trade in leopard hunting trophies. We do also note that the Secretariat has engaged with experts of the IUCN, as noted by the UK, to initiate the development of guidance that can assist parties in the preparations of NDFs for trade in leopard hunting trophies. In reality, to date, all range states have submitted NDFs on leopard without guidance and have produced robust documents. Therefore, we welcome the Animals Committee meeting to conclude this business on reviewing leopard hunting quotas and to look to have these NDFs inform the process in the next 9 years. Lastly, we note this review process was an expensive undertaking for the range states, and therefore we do strongly encourage CITES to secure funding for the Appendix 1 species quota review mechanism in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Stacey. Just in time. I will allow one last intervention from Bornfree. You have waited a long time, so I will give you the floor. Just please keep in the 3 minutes, then I will wrap up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates. Thank you for giving me the floor. This intervention is made on behalf of Born Free Foundation and 10 additional observer organisations who I will identify in the chat. In relation to document 29.2, we'd like to highlight ongoing declines in leopard populations and uncertainty around population estimates. We'd also like to flag that since COP18, 2 important scientific papers have been published in relation to the offtake of leopards, its sustainability, and its impacts on populations. The first was by Troburst et al. In 2019, which examined the CITES leopard quota system and concluded, among other things, that the current regime largely fails to meet the general principles of precaution, sustainable use, and adaptive management. And the second is by Naude et al. In 2020, which examined the effects of anthropogenic mortality of leopards, which includes trophy hunting, and highlighted disruption to subadult male leopard dispersal with potential consequences for the future viability of the populations. These important scientific studies clearly represent other relevant information, which the Animals Committee should fully account for as it discharges its responsibilities under Decision 18.167. We did submit these papers to the Secretariat prior to AC31, and I'll post links to these 2 studies in the chat. Additionally, we would like to note, among other concerns, that neither the Central African Republic nor Botswana currently have specific leopard management plans in place. In relation to Botswana's request to maintain its quota of 130 trophies, we note the concerns expressed by the Animals Committee in relation to the information submitted by Botswana as detailed in AC 31 Imp 17, and emphasise our view that Botswana's response in AC 31 Imp 20 does not adequately address these concerns. In light of this, it is our view that the Animals Committee should subject Botswana's and the Central African Republic's proposed quotas to further review. We would also urge the committee to exercise caution by recommending a suspension of all quotas for leopard hunting trophies, at least until the guidance on establishing non-detriment findings for trade in leopard hunting trophies being developed under Decision 18.169 has been completed and reviewed by the Animals Committee, and to agree a process for their re-evaluation taking into consideration the scientific studies I've referenced and other relevant information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bornfree. After having listened to all the comments and suggestions, I think that the concerns raised by the UK and WWF concerning the resolution itself, I think that will be reflected in the summary record, and also the concerns just raised. And I do think that the Animals Committee still proposes the recommendations as I read them out, meaning the Animals Committee informs the Standing Committee that it considers the quotas for leopards for the Central African Republic and Botswana, as mentioned in Resolution 10.14 Ref 16, to be set at levels which are non-detrimental to the survival of the species. And the Animals Committee informs the Standing Committee that for Ethiopia, it considers the proposed reduction of the quota for leopards in the resolution Conf 1014 Ref Cop 16 to 20 trophies to be set at levels which are non-detrimental to the survival of the species in the wild. So with this, I conclude that topic, and I would move on now to the working group reports. The first one is AC 31Com1 on eels. It was chaired by the representative for Europe, Dagmar Sikova. So I open the floor and give the floor to Dagmar for the presentation of the working group report.
Thank you very much, Matthias. The working group on eels met with participation of 2 members of the committee, 14 parties and 9 observer organizations. It was mandated to initiate a discussion to consider the potential use of source code R on ranching for the European eel, to consider the Secretariat's draft decisions in paragraph 17 of the addendum and identify other parts of the current decision that may merit extension or renewal. Then to review available information relating to the potential risks and benefits of reintroducing seized live European eels to the wild. As appropriate, draft other recommendations directed to the Standing Committee and the Conference of the Parties. The working group had an interesting discussion, and it most importantly reviewed all the decisions, both the current decisions and those contained in paragraph 17 of the addendum to document AC 31 Doc 22. And agreed on set of draft decisions to be considered for submission to the COP19. These decisions build up and continue the process as already established previously, with some amendments which take into account developments since COP18. Then concerning the 2 substantive issues, the paragraph A on ranching, the working group discussed the potential value of using source code R, as well as possible uncertainties linked to that source code. And it agreed that further discussion is needed and the issue should be reconsidered when making recommendations on the study, which is now being prepared on levels of trade and trade patterns. This study is being prepared under Decision 18199, paragraph D, and it will be reviewed after COP19. A similar situation was found for or agreed for the guidance on reintroduction of seized live European eels to the wild. The working group did not consider the development of such a guidance to be a priority task for this moment, but it recommended that, again, this issue should be reconsidered when making recommendations on already mentioned study on levels of trade and trade patterns. I would just like to draw your attention to one minor grammatical error that in the sentence which refers to these issues to be referred to the study, there is are instead of is. So there is twice in the document a sentence saying the group agreed to reconsider the issue when making recommendations on the study on levels of trade and trade patterns, especially in live eels for aquaculture, that are currently being prepared, and it should read that is currently being prepared because it refers to the study. So that's just two minor amendments replacing are by is. And yeah, so this is in brief the summary of the working group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dagmar, representative of Europe, for that introduction. So I open the floor for any comments, suggestions. I see representative of Europe asking for the floor.
Thank you very much, Matthias. Sorry for coming back again on this issue. When we discussed this final report within the European region, with the European Union member states, we thought that as the issue of reintroductions of the live seized eels is still to be considered under the framework of the future study, it might be still useful to collect from the parties which already have some protocols or guidance documents available to collect these documents. So we would like to suggest to add one bullet point to the decision 19AA at any place which you would find appropriate, which would read: share with the Secretariat, where available, protocols or guidelines for reintroduction of seized live glass eels.
Can you say that again slower, please, so that I can write down, because I'm not that fast.
Of course. So there would be a new bullet point somewhere in 19AA, new after D or E. And this bullet point would read, share with the Secretariat, where available, protocols or guidelines for reintroduction
yes,
of seized live seized live European eels, not glass eels. So for reintroduction of seized live European eels in the wild.
Okay, I got it. Is it good?
Thank you very much.
Did you also get it, Secretariat? Very good. Okay, thank you very much, Europe. Anybody else asking for the floor? I don't see anybody, so I would therefore then conclude that the Animals Committee agrees to the following recommendations. Reconsider the issue of the potential use of source code R, ranching, for specimens of European eel, Anguilla, from aquaculture production systems, and the potential risks and benefits of reintroducing seized live European eels to the wild when making recommendations on the study on levels of trade and trade patterns, especially in live eels for aquaculture, that is currently being prepared in the implementation of Decision 18199, paragraph D, which will be reviewed by the Animals Committee following COP19. Then second recommendation, note that the European eel could be a good case study for consideration at the planned workshop on non-detriment findings under Decision 18132. And finally, submit 4 draft decision as amended by the European representative for consideration to the Standing Committee. Are you asking for the floor, Secretary? Yes, please.
Just to specify, Mr. Chairman, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that the European representatives suggested additional paragraph for draft resolution 19AA could best fit under the paragraph E, so it would become the new paragraph F as far as we are concerned. And I think that in her text, in the final text, the final end of that thing, that she basically meant to say of seized, the reintroduction of seized live European eels to the wild. In the wild, to fit actually your first recommendation. Just these two issues. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think this is clear now and concludes the matter. So thank you very much to the working group for their hard work and for the contribution. So thank you. We would then move on to the AC 31 COM2 on appropriate and acceptable destinations. This working group was co-chaired by the European representative Dagmar Sikova and myself, and I will summarize the working group report. The mandate of the in-session working group was concerning decisions 18153, considered the scientific aspects of the responses in paragraph 7 to 9 of Addendum 1, document AC31, Doc 18.2, and Annex 3 to document AC31, Doc 18.1, and draft recommendations for the Animals Committee's consideration as appropriate, and B, concerning Decision 18155, review Annexes 1 and 2 to the Addendum 2 to document AC31, Doc 18.1, and any updates provided to the meeting by the co-chairs of the working group, and draft recommendations as appropriate for the Animals Committee's consideration. We had 2 meetings of the working group. In the first, we thought we had finalized both mandates, but then we received an additional document submitted by Born Free, which was then supported by Gabon and Burkina Faso, which we then considered on the second meeting. And based on these discussions there, we have now the following recommendations for the Animals Committee to agree to. In relation to the mandate A, we would like to recommend the following, to agree to the following. Concerns were raised regarding Namibia's interpretation of its export of live African elephants to non-range states outlined in paragraph 7 of document AC31, Doc 18.1, Addendum 1. Further concerns were raised regarding Zimbabwe's reservation submitted following the changes adopted at COP18 in Resolution Conf 1120, Ref COP 18, on definition of the term appropriate and acceptable destinations, and the export of live elephants occurring in 2019 as outlined in paragraph 9 of document AC 31 Doc 18.1 Addendum 1, while noting discrepancies between document AC 31 Doc 18.2 and the response provided by Zimbabwe in Annex 3 to document AC 31 Doc 18.1. Therefore, as these matters are related to implementation matters, the working group recommends that the Animals Committee refer these concerns to the Standing Committee for its advice and recommendations as appropriate. In relation to Mandate B, in relation to Decision 18152, Paragraph D, the working group recommends that the Animals Committee submit the document in Annex 2 as amended in this working group report to the Standing Committee for consideration and possible endorsement. This is the document referring to possible forms, non-binding guidance for determining whether a proposed recipient of a living specimen of African elephant and or southern white rhinoceros is suitably equipped to house and care for it. This is the document Annex 2 of this COM document. And concerning the working group could not reach consensus on the document in Annex 1 of this report and recommends that the Animals Committee submit it to Standing Committee 74 for further discussion and, if appropriate, modification and onward submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. So these are the recommendations from the working group, and I would now open the floor for any comments and suggestions. The floor is open for members of the Animals Committee. I don't see anybody from the committee asking for the floor, so I open the floor for observer parties. I don't see anybody asking for the floor, so I would open the floor for observer organizations. I see Fondation Franz Weber. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. It's a technical issue, but we believe it's important in this state of the process to remind it. Paragraph 1 of Resolution Conf 1120 limits appropriate and acceptable destinations of African elephants to in situ conservation programs or secure areas in the wild within the species' natural and historical range in Africa, except in acceptable circumstances, being determined in consultation with the Animals Committee through its chair and in consultation with the IUCN Elephant Specialists Group. The working group did not consider paragraph 1 of Resolution Conf 1120 in their discussions, as the mandate of decision 18.55 addresses only to paragraph 2b. So we kindly ask for this indication to be included in the working group report. In fact, this request is in line with the debate that took place during the meeting in May 31, when the document 18 was discussed, and more specifically with the chair's conclusion, but it would be prudent to include it in the final report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I do think it is quite clear that the mandate and the decision that they are clear, and I don't think it needs to be worded explicitly. But I think your concern can be noted in the summary record, which will reflect what your suggestion was. So I don't see anybody else asking for the floor. So the conclusions then is the Animals Committee agrees on the following recommendations. Submit the non-binding guidance for determining whether a proposed recipient of a living specimen of African elephant and or southern white rhinoceros is suitably equipped to house and care for it, as amended in Annex 2 of document AC31-COM2 to the Standing Committee for consideration and possible endorsement. Submit the non-binding best practice guidance on how to determine whether the trade would promote in situ conservation as amended in Annex 1 of document AC31-COM2 to SC74 for further discussion and, if appropriate, modification and onward submission to the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And refer the following concerns to the Standing Committee for its advice and recommendations as appropriate. Namibia's interpretation of its export of live African elephants to non-range states outlined in paragraph 7 of document AC31 Doc 18.1 Addendum 1 and Zimbabwe's reservation submitted following the changes adopted at COP18 in Resolution Conf 1120 Ref COP 18 on definition of the term appropriate and acceptable destinations and the export of live elephants occurring in 2019 as outlined in paragraph 9 of document AC31 Doc 18.1 Addendum 1, while noting discrepancies between document AC31 Doc 18.2 and the response provided by Zimbabwe in Annex 3 to document AC31 Doc 18.1. So this concludes that agenda item, and we move on to AC31 COM3 on marine turtles, and I would like to give the floor to the alternate representative of Asia, Arvin Diezmos, to introduce the document.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Hello. Good. Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, Chair. And so this is the report of the working group on sea turtles, the Chelonidae and Dermachelidea family of marine turtles. And good day to all. We are pleased to report the results of the marine turtle working group during the session, which took place on Friday, June the 11th. We refer you to the official document AC31-COM3. The co-chairs of the working group are Mr. Daniel Ramadori, the AC representative for Central and South America and the Caribbean, and yours truly. And we thank the assistance of the Secretariat represented by Ms. Karen Gaynor, Ms. Yoon Jen Kim, Ms. Thay Carol, Mr. Johannes Stahl, and of course, Mr. Thomas de Muline. We also thank Ms. Vanessa Tassenberger, the Scientific Authority of Argentina. And finally, we thank you, Chair, our AC Chair, for guidance. And of course, we thank Mr. Hugh Robertson for his invaluable work on AC31 Doc 24. The in-session working group was well attended with 5 representatives coming from the AC, 16 coming from the parties, and 10 observers from IGOs and NGOs. We would like to thank all of you for your hard work and participation. The working group was mandated to consider the review of the sea turtle study and the draft recommendations of the program co-leader presented in Annex 1 of the addendum to document AC31 document 24. And any scientific information in the parties' responses to notification number 2020/015 in Annex 2 of the addendum. And finally, to review the draft recommendations contained in Annex 1 of the addendum to document AC31 Doc 24. The working group co-chairs shared the draft recommendations and decision through email, written comments, and were discussed during a video meeting on Friday, June the 11th. We only have 2 recommendations, actually. Again, we refer you to the document, AC 31-3. And the recommendations are as follows. The WG recommends the Animals Committee to accept the recommendations and submit the draft decisions for consideration at SC 74. And the WG agreed to submit 4 draft decisions directed to the parties, the SC, AC, and the Secretariat for consideration by the Animals Committee and submission to SC 74. The text of which, again, can be found in the WG report in document AC 31-3. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, alternative representative from Asia. Thank you very much for this presentation. So I would open the floor for any comments. I see the North American representative has asked for the floor. So North America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the working group in preparing this report. During the workshop on marine turtles, WWF and the United States requested the deletion of 2 paragraphs in the draft document that was circulated. And there were no objections from the membership. These paragraphs encourage parties to undertake additional studies on the trade in sea turtles. As we explained in the working group, there has been numerous studies on the trade of marine turtles for more than 1 decade. We would prefer to see action taken to address the information and recommendations rather than conduct further assessments. Therefore, the North American region recommends the deletion of paragraph B on the recommendations, and similarly, we recommend deletion of subparagraph D under decision 19AA. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think as this has been already discussed and nobody opposed in the working group, as you stated, I don't think I would need to have strong opposition to deleting these 2 paragraphs, one in the recommendations and one in decision 19AA. So I still have the floor open for any recommendations or comments. I see the representative of Central, South, and America and the Caribbean. You have the floor, Daniel.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. No, es cierto.
Thank you, Chair. We did discuss deleting the paragraph B, and the working group did reach consensus on that. There is absolutely no objection to paragraph B being deleted and to the other amendment. And I would also like to say that the notification cited should be notification 2020-035. There was a mistake there. Thank you, sir.
Can you please indicate where this is the notification?
Sí.
My colleague, when he read out our mandate, and he referred to notification 2020-015, and it should be 035. That is sub-paragraph A of our mandate. That is to say, on page 1.
Thank you very much, Daniel. We'll make that change. Thank you for pointing this out. Otherwise, I have heard support for deletion of these two paragraphs. I see WWF has asked for the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. While we agree that action is necessary at this point and there isn't a need for further studies, we do note that these paragraphs refer specifically, and we even spoke to this effect in the working group, but on the other hand, we note that these paragraphs refer specifically to parties that are already, where there's already proven evidence of concern, because they were the subject of the previous study. We would object to withholding action pending further studies in other countries, but we don't necessarily object to these particular paragraphs. Thank you.
Thank you, WWF. I don't see anybody else asking for the floor, so I would conclude as follows. The Animals Committee agrees to the following recommendations. Agree to recommendations A and C in document AC 31-3. These recommendations are as follows. The Animals Committee notes that the study entitled Status, Scope and Trends of the Legal and Illegal International Trade in Marine Turtles, its conservation impacts, management options, and mitigation priorities identified key issues where CITES and other actors can help with the conservation of marine turtles. And C, parties are reminded to include marine turtle confiscation and seizure data in their annual illegal trade report. The Animals Committee also agrees to submit the 4 draft decisions in document AC 31-3 as amended by the North American region, which is deleting paragraph D of decision 19AA directed to parties to the Standing Committee for its consideration. So with this, I conclude that item. Thank you very much for the members and the working group, and also parties, of course, who have and NGOs who have contributed to that work. And now I would come to document AC 31-4 on nomenclature. It will be introduced by the Animals Committee nomenclature specialist, Peter Paul van Dijk. You have the floor. Yes.
Apologies, Chair, some connectivity issues. Thank you, Chair. The in-session working group on nomenclature gave further consideration to topics that had not reached the conclusion in the earlier inter-session working group on nomenclature that worked over email in the early months of this year. The in-session working group will further on those outcomes at its online meeting on 9th of June, and its mandate, membership, findings, and recommendations are provided in document AC 31-4 and its annex. I thank all working group participants and the Secretariat for the constructive and informative engagement. With regard to the taxonomy of birds, which is part A of the working group mandate, the working group recommended the adoption of the HBW and BirdLife International's illustrated checklist of birds of the world, but agreed that this will require substantial additional work that cannot be conducted with the necessary review and input by parties before COP19. And the working group therefore recommended an updated decision to COP19 to continue this work, which can be found at the top of page 2 of the COP4 document. Concerning the work on time-specific versions of online databases, also under part A of the working group mandate, The working group recommends the nomenclature specialist to work with the Secretariat and the chair of the Animals Committee to prepare and evaluate an extract of coral species of interest to CITES from the World Register of Marine Species, or WORMS, database as a case study, and based on its findings, draft a corresponding decision for adoption at COP19 as appropriate. With respect to the large number of nomenclatural changes proposed in the scientific literature that concern CITES-listed animal species, under Part B of its mandate, the working group recommends the Animals Committee to recommend the adoption of the 180 cases listed in the recommended sheet of the annex to conform, and defer the cases in the undecided and rejected sheets to after COP19 as appropriate, under the draft bird nomenclature decision, as well as under general nomenclature work mandated by ResConf 12.11. Of particular significance among recent taxonomy and nomenclature changes is the matter of the African elephants. These have increasingly been accepted as two distinct species in the scientific community, and nomenclaturally, the situation is relatively simple. Taxonomic splits happen all the time in science, and many such cases are indeed included in the document annex of cases recommended for adoption at COP19. As such changes have been recommended and adopted at previous COPs as well. But the African elephants are unique in the number and substance of CITES documents dealing with their trade management in the widest sense, and a simple split of names likely masks potential implementation challenges. Thus, a thorough evaluation process was considered to be desirable by the working group. This process should include the Secretariat seeking the perspective of parties, as well as conducting an evaluation of what the recognition of forest elephants as a separate species would mean for the implementation of resolutions and decisions concerning African elephants. The working group also believes that the perspectives of the Standing Committee concerning implementation would be essential. Therefore, we propose a set of decisions, being draft decisions 19BB to 19DD in the COM4 document, to address the African elephant in the nomenclature room. Concerning the high-level nomenclature of reptiles, the working group recommends the Animals Committee request the nomenclature specialist to continue seeking input and perspectives from reptile taxonomists and other sources, as part of the regular nomenclature activities mandated under ResConf 12.11. As for proposed new standard references for species newly listed in CITES appendices at COP18, under Part C of its mandate, the working group recommends the adoption of Annexes 3 for fish and 4 for spiders of document AC 31, Doc 37 at adoption at COP19. The working group further recommends that updated versions of the proposed reptile standard reference, being Annex 1, and amphibian standard reference, Annex 2, to the same document 37, be prepared by the nomenclature specialist between now and the submission deadline for COP19, so that recent nomenclature changes affecting the gecko genus Goneurosaurus and the salamander genus Tylototriton can be incorporated and adopted by the parties at COP19. Concerning Part D of its mandate, the working group recommends that the Animals Committee requests its chair to propose to the chair of the Standing Committee that the Standing Committee's working group on electronic systems and information technologies be asked to consider within its existing mandate the recording of species nomenclature changes in electronic CITES permit systems. And the final item to highlight is mandate topic E, which started out with listing of pangolins in the appendices, and the topic over time evolved into a more general consideration of the merits and challenges of higher taxon listings in the appendices. Like nomenclature of species listed in CITES Appendix 3, the topic considered yesterday, this is now recognized as a matter of general implementation significance. Accordingly, the working group proposed to seek the views of the Standing Committee on the matter of benefits and impacts of higher tax on listings in the appendices through the chair of the Animals Committee, and surely with input from the Plants Committee as well. Until such views are received, it does not appear advisable to proceed on the specific matter of pangolin listings, and the working group did not recommend that the depository government be requested at this time to submit a proposal as drafted in the annex to Doc AC 31, Doc 38. However, should one or more parties feel that the current listing of pangolins in the appendices has created an undesirable situation, then there is no impediment for these parties to take the annex to AC 31, Doc 38, edit it to their specifications, carry out the necessary consultations, and submit it for the parties' consideration at the 19th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And with this, I welcome observations from the members, parties, and other observers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Nomenclature Specialist and Chair of the Working Group on Nomenclature. It is baffling how much you have been able to produce in such a short time. And seeing the wealth of topics we have to look at, I would propose that we go through the proposed recommendations one by one. And after each of these recommendations, I will seek whether the committee or parties or observers are of the view to support them, implying that silence is consensus of that recommendation. So the first recommendations would be propose a new decision 19AA to COP19 as drafted in document AC 31 COM4 on nomenclature of bird family and order names. I open the floor for any comments or suggestions. As I said, silence is agreement. I see silence, or I hear silence. So this is the first recommendation is then agreed. The second recommendations would be request that the nomenclature expert work with the Secretariat and the chair of the Animals Committee to propose decisions to COP19 to take the work time-specific versions of online databases forward using corals and the World Register of Marine Species worms database as a case study. Open the floor also here for comments. I don't see any, so this is also agreed. Then the third recommendation would be propose the adoption of the 180 nomenclatural updates presented in the recommended worksheet in Annex A of AC 31 COM4. I don't see any interventions, so this is also agreed. The fourth recommendation is to note the cases in the undecided and rejected worksheets for further evaluation after COP19 under Decision 19AA and as part of regular activities under Resolution Conf 1211 Ref COP 18 on standard nomenclature. I open the floor for interventions here. I don't see any, so this is also agreed. Then concerning African elephant, proposed decisions 19BB to 19DD for consideration at COP19. And here I also open the floor for interventions. I see IWMC. Jacques Bernet, you have the floor.
Il me semble que le problème de l'éléphant.
Thank you, sir. It seems that the African elephant is an exception in the appendices because the whole elephant family is covered by the convention under Res 924 Rev Cop 17. When species are in a higher taxon, the higher level should be included. That does not seem to be covered in the working group report as I heard it. I wonder whether we shouldn't have Elephantides species listed in Annex 3 and have the others in Appendix 2. Loxodonta africana, for instance. Now, we don't know whether it's always going to be Loxodonta africana or another one. I think for the countries concerned it will be Loxodonta africana, but I do think that this issue of the hierarchies of listed taxa should be taken into account.
Exactly one of the questions that will have to be looked at, how we deal with the issue, that this would be one of the possibilities, I suppose, to deal with the issue. But I would like to give the floor to the nomenclature specialist if he has an answer to the question posed by IWMC. So, AC nomenclature specialist, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is certainly a matter that touches on both the higher taxon listings, that is essentially the last part of the discussion in our working group, but also it is very much a consideration to be submitted as part of the consultations on how to deal for CITES, how to deal with African and other elephant listings in the NDCs. I don't think there is much benefit to discuss it at length at this moment, but it certainly is something to consider in the coming years as this African elephant consultation goes underway as proposed by the decisions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, AC nomenclature specialist. I think that echoes what I thought. That is one of the aspects we will have to be looking at, and that may be one solution, but it will have to be thoroughly thought through what the implications would be of such a way out. So I think this is well taken note of. I see HSI. Ron, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup.
You're welcome.
A little difficulty there.
Yes, I can hear you.
Just to point out, in reference to the idea of a higher taxon listing for African elephants, that it really wouldn't work very well in this particular case, because you would end up with Cyclotis. I believe all the populations of Cyclotis are in countries whose elephant populations are on Appendix 1, whereas populations of Africana, there are some on 1 and some on 2. So any kind of a higher taxon listing would be sort of like half of one species and all of another on Appendix 1 and then a portion of the other on Appendix 2. I don't think that would be helpful in this particular case. The questions are really ones of implementation and what difficulties these might pose in implementing these listings for the range states and others, which is why the working group felt that it was important to have some of these matters studied and cleared up so we actually know what we're doing. And we've put making this decision now for like 15 years or more since the first scientific studies came out suggesting that there were 2 species involved, and presumably there were practical reasons why we did that, and that we need to find out whether changing that is going to create any problems, and that is why the recommendation is there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, HSI. I think we do not want to start the discussion on this matter because I think that would take the rest of today's time. So I think we have parked that decision, the discussion where it belongs with these decisions. And I think we can, the Animals Committee can agree on proposing these decisions 19BB to 19DD. So with this, I would then move on to the next recommendation, which reads, request the AC nomenclature specialist continue to seek input and perspectives from reptile taxonomists and other sources as part of regular activities under Resolution Conf 1211 Ref COP 18 on standard nomenclature. I opened the floor for interventions. I still see IWMC, but I think you are still there because you haven't gone out of the requesting phase. So can you please, or did you want to take the floor, IWMC, on this issue? I don't think so. I think we can agree on this recommendation, and we would then move on to the next recommendation concerning Annexes 1 and 2 of document AC31 Doc 37. Instruct nomenclature specialists to prepare revised checklists incorporating recent changes to the genera Goneurosaurus and Tylotot, choose those for adoption at COP19. Any intervention on that recommendation? I don't see any, so this is also agreed. Then the next recommendation is submit Annexes 3 and 4 of document AC31 Doc 37 to COP19 for adoption as supplementary checklists for species of fishes and invertebrates newly included in the appendices at COP18. Any interventions on this recommendation? None. Then the next recommendation is request the Animals Committee Chair to propose to the Chair of the Standing Committee that the Standing Committee's Working Group on Electronic Systems and Information Technologies be asked to consider within its existing mandate the recording of species nomenclature changes in electronic CITES permit systems. As I chair this working group, I'm looking forward to that work, of course. I don't see any interventions on that issue, so glad to be able to help, I hope. Then the final recommendation is through its chair to seek the views of the Standing Committee on the matter of benefits and impacts of higher taxon listings in the appendices, taking into account document AC31 Doc 38 with its annex and its addendum, as well as the provisions of Resolution Conf 924 Ref COP 17 Annex 3 as part of its work on guidance for publication of the appendices or another process. Any interventions? I don't see. Yes, Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that you have gone through all the recommendations that the Animals Committee is considering. We would like to have a clarification on the third recommendation that you made, which was, and I quote, propose the adoption of 180 nomenclature updates presented in the recommended worksheet in Annex A of AC31 COM4. And we wonder if what you meant, or what is being meant here, is that propose for adoption at COP19 the 180 nomenclature updates presented in the recommended worksheet in Annex A of AC31 COM4. Where it should read, yes, propose for adoption at COP19.
Yes, yes, so, of course, yes. This is
just to be clear. Thank you.
Yes, I think this clarified. This is what was meant, that we propose it for adoption at COP19. So I think with this change, that recommendation is also adopted. So I think that concludes the document AC31 COM4 on nomenclature. And again, big thanks to the nomenclature specialist and its working group, who has really produced a lot of very valuable work. So with this, I would move now to the next document, which is AC30. Now it's my cat again. I have to save my keyboard because otherwise he is kicking me out. Okay, we are at AC31.5 on vultures, and this document is being introduced by the representative for Asia, Ashgar Mobaraki. Ashgar, you have the floor. Is our colleague present? I don't see him in the list of participants. Okay, so I will then take up I will try to mimic our colleague from Asia. So the working group on West African vultures presents document AC31.5. The mandate of the working group was comment and review the draft recommendations in Addendum 1, review the draft decisions in Annex to Addendum 2, and report its findings for consideration by the Animals Committee. The recommendations of the working group are that the Animals Committee agreed to the following. Having integrated the draft recommendations in Addendum 1 of document AC31.20 into the draft decisions proposed in Addendum 2 of the same document, and as per decision 18191, the Animals Committee agrees to submit the following draft decision on West African vultures to the Standing Committee for its consideration and reporting to the Conference of the Parties at its 19th meeting. It concerns decisions 19AA, 19BB, CC, DD, EE, and FF, which are contained on page 1 to 3 of document AC31.5. So I would like to open the floor for any interventions. I see the representative of North America. So Hezekiah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While the report from the in-session West African Vultures Working Group reflects the working group discussion, we're concerned about the implication of some of the language suggested in draft decision 19AA, paragraph D. Specifically, we're concerned about the requirement that range states submit their non-determined findings for the export of vulture specimens to the Secretariat for inclusion on the CITES website and review by the Animals Committee. The North America region supports giving more deference to parties to choose whether to share their non-determined findings with the Secretariat or request the advice of the Animals Committee. It is also not clear what the Animals Committee is expected to do with the review of non-determined findings as suggested here. If this language is maintained in the draft decision, it will create a separate parallel process to that of review of significant trade, which the North America region does not support doing. If there is a concern that legal vulture trade from specific range states is unsustainable, then the proper approach will be to include the species in the review significant trade process. As a result, the North American region would like to suggest the following minor revision to the language in draft decision 19AA, paragraph D, as follows. To insert after vulture species the word consider, and then to modify submit by submitting. So it will read, followed resolution COM 16.7, and in cases where there is an interest in exporting globally threatened vulture species, considers submitting non-document findings for the export of vulture specimens to the Secretariat for inclusion in the CITES website and review by the Animals Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, North America. This is clear what you are suggesting. I think we have captured that. I still have the floor open for comments. I do think that the proposed changes by the North American region make sense. So then the proposed conclusion on that document is the Animals Committee agrees to the following recommendation. Submit the 6 draft decisions as amended by the North American region to the Standing Committee. So thank you very much. We can then move on to the next COM document, which is AC31 COM 6 on African lions, and it was chaired by the representative for Africa, Panta Kazoma, and then I would like to give the floor to Panta to introduce that document.
Mr. Chairman, the in-session working group on African lions met on Tuesday, the 8th of June, online, and the members are shown in document SC31 COM 6. Those were the members. The mandate of the group was to agree on a process and a way forward for implementing decision 18.247, paragraph A, and draft recommendations for considerations by Animals Committee in this particular meeting. Mr. Chairman, there are 5 recommendations there, as seen in that document, the bottom of page 1 and top of page 2. And the number of draft decisions were made. 1 decision to the Secretariat to inform Animals Committee regarding activities and outputs of the Africa Carnivore Initiative that relate to the committee's mandate and request advice from the Animals Committee as appropriate. The other decisions was directed to the Animals Committee that the Animals Committee shall advise the Secretariat as appropriate on information that it provides regarding activities and outputs of the African Carnivore Initiative that are relevant to the Animals Committee's mandate. Chair, there was a request during the in-session working group that the comments that had been provided by members of the intersessional working group on lions be shared. And I'm happy to note that Secretariat was able to compile them as document SC31 INF 23. If members are interested, they can check it out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair of this working group. So I open the floor for comments on document AC31 COM 6. I see the North American region has asked for the floor, so Zico, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, as I said on summary 1, I would like to request that in the members part, my name to be deleted as representative for North America, because I did not participate in that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, North America. We will amend that report. Any other comments, suggestions? I don't see any. So with this then, the Animals Committee agrees to the following recommendations. Agree to the 5 recommendations listed in document AC 31Com6, including 2 draft decisions to be submitted to COP19. I hope I didn't miss anything. Okay, so I think that is then the recommendation from the Animals Committee on African lions. So with this, we can then move on to AC 31Com7 on sharks and rays. It was chaired by the representative of Oceania, Hugh Robertson. So you have the floor.
Thank the working group for very productive discussions over about 10 days we had. We had 25 parties in the working group and 22 observer organizations, so it was one of the larger working groups. And we were very well supported by Hyung Jong Kim and Juan Carlos Vasquez Murillo from the Secretariat. And special thanks to our rapporteur, Sarah Fowler, who's done that rapporteur job for Sharks Working Group since 2002. It's quite a remarkable record. And also her assistants, Cassie Rigby and Glenn Sant, this time round. Our mandate covered 4 broad areas. The mismatch of CITES trade data versus what is believed to be traded, especially those sharks introduced from the high seas. Second area was the responses of parties to notification 2020-016, and regarding implementation issues that parties were having, and also new information that they provided in their responses and in some inf docs. The third area was the Ndf Workshop, where sharks may provide particularly useful case studies, and we're thinking areas such as introduction from the sea, bycatch, and migratory shared stocks, which not necessarily unique to sharks, but sharks provide good opportunities to look at case studies there. And the fourth area was to identify decisions for Conference of the Parties 19. We had 3 Teams meetings, 2 initial meetings to set the scene and seek input from working group members. These were set at different times of the day or night to allow different parts of the globe to participate in the working group. And then we had a wrap-up session of 3 to 4 hours as well. Now, InfDoc 24 summarizes the contributions by working group members. It takes 35 pages, so you can see it was a very active working group. And summary of the working group discussions are the next 5 pages in InfDoc 24. And these were, in both cases, were split into the 4 topic areas I mentioned earlier. We came up with 9 recommendations, and I have 2 amendments to make to those recommendations. So the first amendment is in recommendation H, where we left out traffic, and so H would read, noting the benefits of close collaboration with FAO and other relevant organizations and experts, including traffic and the IUCN species survival, etc. So we heard that traffic are already well on the way to doing the study that the Secretariat was required to do, and so they will be working with traffic to finalize that and see benefits in working with IUCN Shark Specialist Group as well. The second amendment is in I, little I, that we had originally intended to have those working group contributions available as an annex to the report, but that's not the case. So if we delete the words annex to this report and as an, and then so it would read is available as an information document, and then add the words AC 31 Inf 24. We also came up with 8 draft decisions, which are to be considered by the Standing Committee 74. The Standing Committee has a working group on sharks as well, and so we want to tie our decisions in with the decisions coming out of the Standing Group's Standing Committee's working group as one sort of single set of decisions for the Conference of the Parties. So we will be working very closely with the Standing Committee working group to finalise the decisions. So I have one amendment to the 8 draft decisions. While we were wrapping up our discussions, Mexico, I think it was, pointed out that 19 EE little c had already been completed. They were referring to an FAO study in 2020, but I'm advised by the Secretariat that that particular study doesn't address all of the issues in that little bullet point C, and so my recommendation is that we reinstate the deleted C, conduct a study analysing the trade in non-fin shark products, etc. And then the new little c becomes the new little d as a result of that reinstating that that paragraph. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hugh, for this introduction. I would now open the floor for interventions on that issue. I see North America has asked for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We were taking note of the various changes suggested by the chair of the working group, but we also would like to recommend a minor correction to decision 19DD, subparagraph A. We believe that the language that has been struck from this subparagraph was done so in error and should be retained. We suggest that the phrase conduct a study to should be retained. We also suggest that the word D be retained before trade and before information. With these corrections, the relevant text will read as follows. Decision 19DD, the Secretariat shall, subject to external funding and in collaboration with relevant organizations and experts, conduct a study to investigate the apparent mismatch between the trade in products of CITES list sharks recorded in CITES trade database, and that would inspect against the information available on catches of listed species. Thank you.
Thank you, North America. I think we have been able to capture the proposed change by North America. So, any other interventions? I don't see any. So, then I would propose as a, I see the Oceania representative has asked for the floor.
I think the amendments made by North America would be fine. If the report has been completed before COP19, then obviously a new study wouldn't be required, and I think people would understand that. So this would certainly cover the bases if that hasn't been completed. So I support this amendment.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we have support for these amendments. So the Animals Committee would then agree to the following recommendations. Agree to the recommendations A to I with the amendments proposed by the chair, by the representative of Oceania, and yes, I think these were the only ones, yes. And the Animals Committee also agrees to submit the 8 draft decisions in document AC31-7 as amended by the North American region and the representative of Oceania. This includes that the deleted paragraph C in 19EE is reinstated, and the decision 19DD letter A is amended as proposed by the North American region. I think that summarizes what has been proposed, and with this I think we can close that issue on sharks and rays, so thank you very much. Now we come to the outstanding issues that we haven't been looking at. Yes, Secretary, you have the floor. Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there is a final element on sharks that we need to look into. Thank you very much.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention in the recommendation that, as well as the recommendations in the ComDoc, I think the Animals Committee is also asked to endorse the chair of the Animals Committee and the chair of the Shark and Rays Working Group to contribute to the joint reporting on sharks with the Standing Committee to COP19, so that you delegate that work to myself and to you, Robertson, from Oceania, to make sure that this is also reflected in the final results from the Standing Committee. So if I don't hear anybody opposing, then I think you will endorse that recommendation. This is the case, then we can really close that matter and move on to agenda item AC 3133 on Queen Conch. Document AC 31-33 and its addendum was prepared by the Secretariat and provides information on the implementation of decisions 18276 and 18278 on Queen Conch. Concerning decision 18276, the Secretariat notes that no requests have been received from Queen Conch range states for the AC to provide advice regarding the making of non-determined findings for trade and on any other technical matters. Concerning decision 18278, the Secretariat has continued to work closely with FAO and the Working Group on Queen Conch. The addendum also reports that the project with the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, to provide support to the main Queen Conch producing countries of the OECS through UNCTAD's Blue Biotrade program has been launched in October 2020. I invite the Animals Committee to take note of document AC 31-33 and its addendum. And I open the floor for comments or interventions. I see the North American representative. So, Ezekiel, you have the floor. Tom, your microphone is still on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The North American region would like to express our appreciation to the Secretariat for AC 31-33 and its addendum on Queen Conch. We welcome the collaboration on activities undertaken by the Secretariat in collaboration with FAO and other partners organizations towards helping to ensure the international trade in Queen Conch is sustainable. We support noting the information of this document and its addendum. Thank you very much.
Thank you, North America, for this support. Any other interventions? I don't see any. So with this, I would conclude that the Animals Committee notes document AC31, Doc 33, and its addendum. So, thank you. Next agenda item is AC31, Doc 36 on marine ornamental fishes. Document AC31, Doc 36 was prepared by the Secretariat and describes 4 thematic studies that are proposed based on the 5 topics specified in paragraph C of Decision 18296. The addendum recalls that the scope of the work on marine ornamental fishes was agreed via an intersessional decision-making process to cover international trade in non-CITES listed live coral reef fishes, including small sharks and rays. The addendum provides updates on the progress of the studies and draws attention to notification to the parties number 2021-030, which included a questionnaire to gather information on non-CITES listed live marine ornamental fish. The addendum proposes 2 draft decisions to extend part of the mandate on marine ornamental fishes beyond COP19. As I open the floor for comments, I particularly invite you to indicate your views on presenting the 2 draft decisions in paragraph 7 in the addendum to COP19. So I open the floor for interventions. I see North America.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The North American region wishes to thank the Secretariat for AC31 Document 36 and its addendum on marine ornamental fish. We appreciate the updates on the status of implementation of Decision 18296, and we extend our thanks to the Secretariat for granting an extension until June 15, 21 for responses to the questionnaire on non-CITES list marine ornamental fish that was available through a notification of March 30. Given the uncertainty regarding the timing of the technical workshop called in Decision 18296, paragraph A, the North American region fully supports the working group recommendations in paragraph 9 of the addendum of document 23 to extend relevant parts of the mandates of marine ornamental fishes beyond COP19. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, North America. Any other observer party asking for the floor? I don't see any. I see Fondation Franz Weber. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This statement is provided by Fondation Franz Weber, SSN, and 12 other organizations that I will post on the chat. We thank the Secretariat for AC31 Doc 36 and the addendum, and generally support the direction of work as outlined in the document. We also extend our gratitude to Switzerland, the EU, and the United States for funding this effort. This work plan is ambitious given the extent of the scope and magnitude of the marine ornamental fish trade. To ensure the issue is addressed comprehensively and does not underestimate the trade, it is important that importing and exporting parties, scientists, and NGOs contribute data and information. However, we are concerned that the UNEP WCMC is requesting data to be provided in a specific format that is challenging and time-consuming for relevant experts. Therefore, we recommend that UNEP WCMC revisit this matter, accept data from experts in any format, and that UNEP WCMC undertake the effort to standardize the data to inform its analysis. Finally, we have the following requests. Firstly, we urge that thematic study 2 evaluate the status and threats of species and geographically separate populations thereof, as many marine ornamental fishes are widely distributed and not fished throughout their range, but may be unsustainably fished at the population level. Secondly, we recommend striking the word suggest and replace it with report in paragraph 13 of AC 31 Doc 36 to provide clarity to workshop organizers as to the product of their work. Lastly, in paragraph 16, section A, we ask to strike the term small in the parentheses and add on display in private and public aquariums in the last sentence. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Can you please repeat that again so that I can follow up what you are requesting?
Okay, that's we are going to suggest and replace it in paragraph 13.
Of which document? Addendum or the
document 36?
Okay.
In paragraph 13, the word suggests with report.
Where's that suggest?
The very final line. Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
yes.
Exactly. Thank you.
Should report findings.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And the very last sentence as well, instead of small sharks and ray on display in private and public aquariums.
The very last sentence of which paragraph?
Of the report. The document 36.
Okay. You would. It is in paragraph 16, letter A.
Yeah.
You would like to have the word small replaced by including
on display in private and public aquariums. So any shark or ray which is on display in aquariums.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I see Ornamental Fish International.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Ornamental Fish International and our members based in 30 countries, and to also speak on behalf of European Pet Organization, the Pet Industry Joint Advisory Council USA, and Pet Industry Joint Advisory Council Canada. We welcome the document and addendum from the CITES Secretariat and support any activities aimed at ensuring the long-term sustainability of the trade in marine ornamental fishes. The scope of this work is, however, substantial, both in terms of the breadth of its considerations and the number of species to be examined. We believe, therefore, that adequate time and consideration should be given to exploring this complex and broad-ranging issue, and that it is not solely used as a means to achieve listings, but as a means to deliver long-standing benefits for marine ornamental fishes and the people that rely on this trade for their livelihoods, very often as the main source of their income. The case of the Bangai cardinal fish, Pteropogon cordoni, that has been discussed in 2 COPs and several Animals Committee meetings shows that there are good and effective alternatives to listings. We hope that the results of the survey led by WCMC will provide some useful input to guide the future direction of this work, but what it has shown, we believe, is that more time and effort is required to develop an understanding of the issues raised and ensure positive long-term outcomes for all involved. For example, our own analysis have shown that official data sets do not give a good representation of the known trade, and therefore, going forward, it will be important to fully engage the industry in an open and transparent manner To this end, we do not support the suggestion in paragraph 15 for partial online expert workshop, as we do not believe that this will offer a transparent route forward. We do, however, support the proposal in the addendum to extend the mandate of the group and allow the Animals Committee to make its recommendations to COP20. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for this. For these comments, I open the floor to FAO. Kim, you have the floor.
A suggestion for sharks and rays that are held in public aquaria. That would then include whale sharks, because whale sharks are held in Okinawa. It kind of puts a new slant on the potential species complement. So just that technical issue to inform the group. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, I think the concerns raised on the study, they will be taken on board by the Secretariat when considering the work together with WCMC. Concerning the scope of the work, that has been already agreed, and if you read paragraph 3 of document AC31 Doc 36 addendum, then that has been agreed to being international trade in non-CITES listed live coral reef fishes, including small sharks and rays. So the scope has been decided already, and I don't think we need to revisit that. But the other concerns there, they will be taken on board and will be shared with WCMC. So any other comments? Thank you. Then with this, the Animals Committee agrees on the let me see, to the text of the draft decisions in paragraph 7 in the addendum to COP19 to continue the work on ornamental fishes as in these decisions. And otherwise the document is noted. Okay, so thank you very much. Then we go to the next item, which is conservation of amphibians. Document AC31 Doc 21 and its addendum was prepared by the Secretariat and provides an overview of the progress on the implementation of Decision 18194 on conservation of amphibians, Amphibia SPP. Specifically on the proposed preparation of background documents for proposed interdisciplinary workshop. As decisions 18194 to 18196 could not be fully implemented, the Secretariat proposes draft decisions to extend the work beyond COP19. The committee is now invited to consider and agree to submit the draft decisions in paragraph 3 of the addendum for submission to COP19. So I open the floor for any comments from members. I see the North American representative. So Ezekiel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. The North American region confirms its support for the 3 revised draft decisions to continue the work on conservation of amphibians, and we will appreciate the opportunity to provide input with respect to the organization of the workshop at the next meeting of the Animals Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, North America. Thank you, Ezekiel. So I open the floor for Costa Rica. Costa Rica, you have the floor.
Sí, buenos días.
Buenos días.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening to all. Thank you, Chair. We would like to stress the importance of decisions 18194 and 195, particularly the question of there being an interdisciplinary workshops for authorities and other relevant authorities, and so there's an understanding of their status in international trade. We would like to have this decision implemented beyond COP19, and we are certainly prepared to work with those involved. This is a matter of importance to us, and we intend to continue with our attempts to have some species listed in Appendix 2. So we therefore think that we'd like to take this opportunity to express our support for this, and we want to work with those countries where species are threatened with extinction. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Costa Rica, for this support. I see Defenders of Wildlife has asked for the floor. Defenders of Wildlife, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Animal Welfare Institute, Defenders of Wildlife, Eurogroup for Animals, Fondation Franz Weber, Humane Society International, Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, Pro-Wildlife, Ruben de Bois, Species Survival Network. According to the IUCN, amphibians are the most threatened major group of vertebrates in the world. Amphibians are at the forefront of epidemic disease risk, with the amphibian chytrid fungus potentially being responsible for the greatest disease-caused loss of biodiversity in record history. This disease is responsible for the catastrophic decline or extinction of at least 200 species of frogs. Trade in amphibians is one of the largest under-regulated trades in terrestrial wildlife globally. While legal international trade occurs in both CITES-listed and unlisted species, illegal trade affects all species. Despite many species of amphibians being listed on CITES, the volume of trade has given rise to questions about sustainability and possible detriment to fragile populations. The quantity of trade in both CITES-listed and non-listed species is substantial and a matter of serious concern. A recent study by Pro-Wildlife found that more than 80% of amphibians on sale at the European pet market were not protected by CITES. Hence, trade is neither regulated nor properly monitored. In addition to the exotic pet trade, the international trade in frog legs is alarmingly high, with about 4 million kilograms annually imported by the European Union. This number correlates with an estimated 80 to 200 million frogs per year. The main exporting countries are Indonesia, Vietnam, and Turkey. A recently published scientific study from France found that the vast majority of processed frog legs in trade are labeled as the wrong species. Another study by Turkish field herpetologists found that wild frog populations in Turkey are in sharp decline due to large-scale exploitation for the frog legs trade. We welcome and strongly support the recommendation to establish an intersessional working group in preparation of the planned workshop. We're interested in participating in the working group if formed and could provide extensive trade data and other information. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Defenders of Wildlife. I have one last intervention, then I will conclude. I have WCS. Sue, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll try to be very brief. WCS works to conserve amphibians in the wild in many countries, including combating illegal trade. But in addition to studying the legality and sustainability of amphibian trade as proposed in the annex document in the workshop that we look forward to engaging with, we strongly recommend consideration of the potential risks of disease to wild amphibian populations in importing countries from international trade in amphibians. This is particularly a concern for fungal diseases, and I won't go into all the threats. Of particular concern is the spread of Batrachochytrium salamandrovirans to Central and North America, which are the world's centers of salamander diversity. The current draft decision in the annex proposes consideration of the emerging threat of disease to traded amphibians, but not to native amphibians in importing countries. And we would recommend it be changed to explore the threat of the spread of diseases from traded amphibians to native amphibians in countries of origin, and not only to explore the threat to traded amphibians. We think it could be improved upon. And thank you very much, and we look forward to participating in the working group.
Can you please repeat your suggested change? That
Yes,
we have
if you,
that?
sure. If you look at the annex,
Yes, I know.
the decision 19.AA little v says, and it says, explore the emerging threat of diseases to traded amphibians. We would like it to be, we would recommend, I apologize, explore the emerging threat of diseases from traded amphibians.
Okay.
You could add from traded amphibians to amphibians in countries of import, or just change the to from.
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, WCS. I think this additional change makes sense, because I mean, what we really have to look at is whether the traded amphibians bring diseases with them to the importing countries, and therefore, and then also possibly to the populations in these countries. So I think explore the emerging threat of diseases from traded amphibians, including amphibian chytid fungus and ranaviruses, should make sense. So I would tend to agree on that change. Any other comments, contributions? Okay, so the Animals Committee agrees to submit the draft decisions as amended by WCS to COP19. Okay. Then the next agenda item is on Saiga antelope. In its report in document AC31 Doc 32 and its addendum, the Secretariat notes that it did not secure external resources to support the implementation of Decision 18271, which directs inter alia to review conservation of and trade in Saiga antelopes and assist with Saiga stockpile management. The Secretariat reports, however, that CMS undertook some work that contributes to this decision. The addendum provides information on the conservation status of Saiga as reported by range states to CMS in 2020, and it refers to a CMS study on the sustainable use of Saiga antelopes. The fourth meeting of the signatories of the CMS Saiga MOU, which is also mentioned in Decision 18271, is expected to be organized online by the CMS Secretariat and Russian Federation late in September of this year. I would like to invite the Animals Committee to take note of document AC31 Doc 32 and its addendum. And also would also like to note that we are directed in Decision 18272 to make recommendations to the Standing Committee as appropriate. We may agree to draw the attention of the Standing Committee to the information in document AC31 Doc 32 and its addendum. We can also recommend that in case further Saiga decisions are adopted at COP19, they should contain provisions to ensure that the Animals Committee remains informed about Saiga conservation issues after COP19. So I would like to now open the floor for comments, and I think it would be good if CMS could take the floor to maybe give some comments on the work that it has been doing on Saiga. First, I see AC rep from North America. Ezekiel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The North American region would like to thank the CITES Secretariat for their work towards implementing Decision 18271 related to Saiga. The North American region supports, noting document 32 and its addendum, but we believe that it will be premature for the Animals Committee to make recommendations to the Standing Committee as recalled in Decision 18272, based solely on the information available at this time. In particular, we know that much of the work called under Decision 18271, particularly related to stockpile management and monitoring, has not been yet initiated because of the lack of external funding to date. And we believe that the information will be important for the Animals Committee to consider in developing recommendations for the Standing Committee. As a result of the Animals Committee lacks of the full breadth of information relevant to the implementation of Decision 18272, therefore we believe that decisions 18270 to 18274 on Saiga antelope should be extended to the next intersessional period between COP19 and COP20. We welcome the committee and parties' views on suggested way forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, North America. So your suggestion is to extend the decisions 18270 to 18274 to after COP19. I think I understood that correctly. Now I see the United States have asked for the floor, then the CMS Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the intervention from North America region, the United States is pleased to announce it will be able to provide US $40,000 to the CITES Secretariat to fund the needed work on Saiga stockpile inventory and management under Decision 18.271. We stress that the review must include range countries as well as China, including Hong Kong and Singapore. Commercial international trade reportedly from stockpiled Saiga horn continues, and the lack of information about the origin of stockpiled horn, the volume of horn in the stockpiles, and how the stockpiles are managed has been a source of considerable discussion for a number of years in CITES, and is a serious concern to the United States. If this work is able to be initiated prior to COP19, we request that the Secretariat report directly to the Standing Committee on the Saiga horn stockpile management. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we'll be in touch with the Secretariat on these funds. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. These are really good news. So thank you very much for that offer. I think it is important to carry this work forward. I see CMS Secretariat, you have the floor. Your microphone is muted. Now it's good.
Well, thank you very much. Apologies. Thank you very much, Chair, and also thank you to the Secretariat for mentioning the CMS work and collaboration with CMS on the conservation of the Saiga antelope. At this stage, I cannot really go into the details of the report that has been drafted on the feasibility of trade in Saiga antelopes, but I can point interested parties and stakeholders to the CMS website, which actually already contains this draft report, and also confirm that this draft report will be discussed by the meeting of the signatories, which will take place in September this year online and will be hosted by the Russian Federation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CMS. I see WCS.
Thank you very much, Chair, and we'll be very brief. And we strongly appreciate the attention of the parties to the conservation of the Saiga antelope and strongly support the interventions by North America and representative and the United States. We work in several range states and consumer states on this issue, and we are very concerned of reports of stockpiles of saiga horns in some consumer states, and they are continue to fuel both consumption and continuing illegal trade, and much more needs to be done in stockpile management and monitoring, and therefore we agree that the study of that issue must be undertaken before there can be any further recommendations, and greatly appreciate the support of the United States for the study to go forward. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, WCS. And finally, I see CIC.
Thank you very much, Chair. My intervention will be brief. It will be on behalf of the CIC and 6 other organisations whose details I will be including in the chat. So we're pleased to note the cooperation between CITES and CMS secretariats to develop and implement a new medium-term international work programme for saiga antelope, as well as its many worthy aims. We're also pleased to note the collaboration between the CITES and CMS secretariats to review the conservation of and trade in saiga antelope. We are especially pleased to see strong priorities being set in the work programme with regards to anti-poaching activities, and which call for an updating national anti-poaching strategies and also strengthening anti-poaching units, and where needed also establishing more anti-poaching units for the protection of all saiga populations in all range states. With regards to sustainable use and trade, we agree with the measures outlined in Section 3 of the work programme, and encourage further research and awareness raising actions around the demand for saiga horn, especially that used in traditional Asian medicines, including market surveys, both on the ground and online. And most importantly, we recognise that local community involvement in conservation activities is necessary, and we're therefore pleased to see the efforts outlined in the work programme with this regard, strengthening the involvement of different stakeholders and local communities in saiga conservation in the range countries. We recognise and are also pleased to see the conservation efforts undertaken by Kazakhstan and Mongolia in particular, who've successfully managed to increase their saiga population numbers over the past 2 years. However, we do still realise that saiga populations face threats, namely diseases and poaching. And based on the current population trends, we would like to emphasise the importance of monitoring and research for the continued conservation efforts of the species. We therefore support the establishment of the intersessional working group and encourage the 5 range states to continue close cooperation in conservation and restoration of saiga antelope. And lastly, being aware that the overall saiga population numbers have increased of late since the MOU came into force, we applaud the good management and joint efforts by the range states and cooperating organisations in their successful implementation of the saiga MOU, as well as the illegal trade control principles outlined by CITES and enforced by the relevant management authorities. However, just to finish, we do wish to draw attention to the additional threats again that saiga populations might face, and which are not necessarily directly related to any international trade. So these, as mentioned, include the prevalence of diseases, habitat degradation, and other anthropogenic threats. And we encourage range states and cooperating organisations to continue to monitor and respond appropriately to these risks. Sorry for the extra time, and thank you.
Thank you. So I see you were still just into 3 minutes, so no worries about that. I'm turning towards the Secretariat. We have the proposal to renew decisions 18270 to 18274. I'm not sure if we can just do that so easily, or if it needs some revamping to reflect the changed circumstances and what has already been accomplished. So my question is, does it need a lot of additional revamping?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by revamping, but there are a couple of, in the current set of decisions we're looking at, there are a couple of time slots included, which were envisaged at the time they were agreed at COP18. Many of these time frames have been pushed by the COVID-19 crisis, pushed out of order, out of sync, so to speak. And that's one of the reasons why many of the things that were supposed to happen after COP18 have not yet taken place. One of the key events in terms of SAIGA knowledge about conservation, management needs, etc. Key events is this fourth time that the SAIGA range states convene and discuss the new 5-year program, and that has been pushed back from 2020 to the end of 21. We hope, at least that's the hope. In that regard, we believe that also extending these decisions still fits and still manages to capture everything that needs to be done after the adoption of this new midterm program for the SAIGA. As regards to what the United States and others have mentioned in terms of SAIGA stockpile management, and we are extremely grateful to the United States for this good news, and I hope that we can follow suit, and because we are frustrated, to be honest, not to be able to move this particularly important item forward, and we completely agree that this is something which needs clarification and perhaps even assistance. We may have to assist certain range states and non-range states consumers in better managing their stockpiles, and that's exactly why these decisions were agreed at COP18. So we would be very grateful, very happy to continue working on this matter. Whether we will be able to, as long as these decisions last, they will last until COP19. If we can undertake this work before COP19, and if we can do it with funding that the United States is committing, if we can actually undertake some research to feed into SE 74 information, bring it there, then we may have to change the nature of the decisions at COP19 again to reflect actually the activities that we will manage to implement between now and COP19. But that's something to bear in mind. So on the one hand, we believe that it is prudent for the Animals Committee to say, look, we would like to agree an extension of these the full set of decisions beyond COP19, and we can help, or perhaps in the executive summary, reflect where this may need tweaking of some of the dates and the events, the COP events, etc. But at the same time, be open-minded to the fact that the Standing Committee, or even the Standing Committee for decisions going forward to COP19, that we may have to alter some of the activities because they may have occurred, hopefully, before COP19.
And if we submit those for decisions for extension to the Standing Committee for its further tweaking or changing of the decisions based on what we know, then I think that way we could capture that.
Exactly, Mr. Chair. I think that we will try to move forward on these decisions thanks to the good news we just heard from the United States. Thanks also to the colleagues from CMS that managed to have an online meeting of the range states later this year. Let's see what these events will bring to us, and then SE 74 will help us refine the type of decisions that have to go forward to COP19.
Okay. So my proposal would then be that the Animals Committee takes note of document AC 31 Doc 32 and its addendum, and submits the four decisions decision 18270 to 18274 to the Standing Committee for its extension to COP19. Does that make sense? Does it capture what we want to see? I open the floor if there are any concerns with the proposed way forward. Okay, I don't see any, so I think that's what we propose then. So thank you very much. And we will move now to pangolins. Document AC31.27 and its addendum was prepared by the Secretariat and provides an update on the implementation of the decision on pangolins, in particular, Decision 18239 on the development of conversion parameters for all pangolin species, and 2, Decision 18240, paragraph C, on the preparation of a report on pangolin conservation status, legal and illegal trade, stocks and stockpile management, and enforcement issues. Concerning Decision 18239, noting that the study on the conversion parameters is not available for review by the Animals Committee at this meeting, but will be after COP19, the Secretariat proposes a draft decision in paragraph 3 of the addendum to extend the mandate of the committee beyond COP19. The text of the draft decision is shown in the addendum and is as follows. Directed to the Animals Committee, the Animals Committee shall review the conversion parameters for all pangolin species developed in accordance with the provisions of Decision 18239 to enable the reliable determination of the number of animals associated with any quantity of pangolin scales seized and that can be used by parties in cases where national legislation demands that such information be provided for court purposes. And B, make recommendations as appropriate to the Standing Committee and the Secretariat. Concerning Decision 18240, paragraph C, and Decision 18242, the Secretariat notes that work on the report is ongoing, but is not available for review by the Animals Committee at this meeting. The Secretariat will submit the report for consideration of the Standing Committee at SC 74. It is further noted that the responses to Decision 18242, which is bring tools and materials that could assist parties on a resolution Conf 17.10 on conservation of and trade in pangolins, will be included in the report. Finally, concerning Decision 18238, it is noted that the Secretariat has not received any report on the implementation of this decision, which is for range states to develop and implement in situ pangolin management and conservation programs, which includes population assessments as anticipated in paragraph 7 of Resolution Conf 17.10 on conservation of and trade in pangolins. Parties are encouraged to submit reports on the implementation of this decision. I therefore propose that the Animals Committee take note of document AC31.27 and its addendum. So I open the floor for any comments. I see North America. North America, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, sorry for maybe a long intervention now, but the North American region would like to thank the CITES Secretariat for their work towards implementing decisions 18239 and 214. Paragraph C, relate to pangolins as well as those parties and organizations who provide responses in support of the implementation of Decision 18240, paragraph C and 242. Given the critical conservation needs of pangolin species, the North American region considers this site work to be extremely important. However, given the extraordinary circumstances presented by the pandemic and the resultant impacts to lives and the workplace, we understand why the work detailed in Decision 18239 has not yet been complete. Therefore, the North American region supports the draft decision presented in paragraph 3 of the addendum to document AC 3127 to defer this work until after COP19, as the conversion parameters of all pangolin species will not be able in time for review by the Animals Committee until then. However, the North American region suggests the following amendment to the draft decision 19AA present in paragraph 3 of document 27 addendum. So we would like to include at the end of paragraph A, after be provided for, to include law enforcement and court purposes. So it will read, review the conversion parameters for all pangolin species, develop in accordance with the provisions of decision 18239 to enable the reliable determination of the number of animals associated with any quantity of pangolin scale size, and that can be used by parties in cases where national legislation demands that such information be provided for law enforcement and court purposes, and it continues. Mr. Chair, given that the report entitled Implementation of CITES Decision 18240C on pangolins will not be ready in time for the review by the Animals Committee at present meeting, the North American region also recommends that the Secretariat consult and receive input from the chair of the Animals Committee on this report before they submit it to the Standing Committee for consideration at the 74th meeting. In addition, we support the proposal that the Animals Committee undertake a review of the report at its first meeting following COP19 as decision for consideration at COP19. The North American region will like to express our concern that the Secretariat has not received any information from pangolin range states in the context of decision 18238 regarding the development and implementation of in situ pangolin management and conservation programs. But given the extraordinary circumstances of the global pandemic, we encourage range states to respond as soon as possible on this important conservation issue. With all 8 species of pangolins considered critically endangered or vulnerable by the combined effects of habitat degradation, overexploitation, and illegal trade, this information is critical and urgently needed. We welcome the parties' views on our suggested way forward, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, North America. Can you please repeat the 2 recommendations you have concerning that the Secretariat should consult with the AC chair on the report to the Standing Committee, and the second recommendation for review of the report? Can you please repeat these 2 recommendations that we can capture them accordingly?
Of course, Mr. Chair. In addition to the precise language of 19AA, yes, let me go back. It's a long intervention.
Yes.
Right, sorry about that. Given the report, the North American region recommends that the Secretariat consult with and receive input from the chair of Animals Committee on this report before they submit it to the Standing Committee for consideration at the 74th meeting. And as I said, we support the proposal that the Animals Committee.
So the Secretariat consult and receive input. Can you say that again?
Right. Secretariat consult with and receive input from the chair of the Animals Committee on this report before they submit it to the Standing Committee at this 74 meeting.
Okay. And the second one was?
Well, once we encourage parties to respond, and that was the last range states respond, and maybe it's one before
Yes, it's one before. Before you noted the concerns that parties had not reported.
Yeah, well, our region supports the decision to defer this work after COP19.
Yeah.
As the conversion parameters will not be able. And I think that's it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Then I would like to give the floor to EIA UK.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is being made on behalf of 19 observer organisations, and I will list these in the chat. Despite the Appendix 1 listing of pangolins, huge volumes of their scales and meat continue to be seized, demonstrating the threat that illegal trade poses to all 8 pangolin species. Between 2017, when the Appendix 1 listing entered force, and 2020, EIA has recorded at least 256 tons of pangolin scales seized globally. In 2019 alone, authorities seized at least 116 tons of pangolin scales and meat. The vast quantities of pangolin scales being intercepted in illegal trade, combined with the species' rarity and the frequency of seizures, suggests that organised criminal trade in pangolin products is continuing to increase pressure on these Appendix 1 species. We note with concern that the issues related to the conservation of this species must be tackled along the entire trade chain, from source site to consumer markets. Given the urgency of the issue, we urge the Animals Committee to ensure that the report to be produced under Decision 18240C on the status of and trade in pangolins is made available prior to SC 74. We recommend that Animals Committee requests the Standing Committee to establish an intersessional working group prior to SC 74, composed of parties and observers, including the Animals Committee Chair, to review the report and develop initial recommendations for consideration at SC 74. We also recommend that the Animals Committee agree to submit to the Standing Committee the draft decision regarding conversion parameters contained in AC 31.27 Addendum Paragraph 3. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, EIA. And finally, I see CIC. CIC, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll make my intervention very short. This intervention is on behalf of the International Council for Game and Wildlife Conservation, CIC, and 6 other organisations whose details I will be included in the chat. So we recognise that pangolins are a species that face great threats through poaching and illegal trade, and that require continuous monitoring in order to ensure species survival. And in the interest of time, I just wish to draw particular attention to the crucial role that anti-poaching efforts, including those funded through international hunting, play in identifying, monitoring and preventing poaching and illegal trade in pangolins, as well as their parts of the various species. Therefore, we especially support Decision 18.238 and the calls on range states to take immediate steps to further develop and implement in situ pangolin management and conservation programs. We wish to emphasize the importance of involving international hunting operators who are actively patrolling vast expanses of land inhabited by pangolins and who thereby contribute to their conservation. So regarding Decision 18.242, which is directed to parties, intergovernmental organizations and international aid agencies and non-governmental organizations, the hunting community stands ready to assist the parties in the conservation of pangolin species. Thank you.
Thank you, CIC. Concerning the request that the Animals Committee asks the Standing Committee to establish an intersessional working group, I don't think we can do that, because it can only be the Standing Committee who establishes such an intersessional working group, and it will only meet next time at SC 74. So I don't think we can force an intersessional working group upon the Standing Committee. The suggestion by the North American region that the Secretariat consults with and receives input from the AC chair on the report that is being submitted to Standing Committee, I think we can do that. I don't see any problem in taking up that recommendation, as well as the addition to decision 19AA as read out by North American region. I think that makes sense to extend that to also law enforcement. That makes completely sense. So I think with all this, I think the Animals Committee recommends that it presents the draft decision 19AA contained in the addendum to the SC 74 and onward submission to COP19, and it also invites the Secretary to consult with and receive input from the AC chair on the review that on the document, on the report that will be produced under decision 18-240 paragraph C. And decision 18, yes, I think that's the one, right? Good. I hope I didn't miss anything. Secretariat?
Just double checking, Mr. Chair, but also I think that the North American region referred to the last sentence in paragraph 6 of the addendum, which reads, the Standing Committee may wish to propose that the Animals Committee undertake a review of the report at its first meeting following COP19 and as a decision for consideration at COP19.
Mm-hmm.
Did you reflect that also this element in your summary of recommendations that can go forward from this Animals Committee?
I don't think I did. So I think that should also be reflected that in the recommendations of the Animals Committee, yes, as you just read out.
I don't hear.
I didn't say anything now. Sure. Okay, good. Sorry. So I think that concludes that item. So with these recommendations, we can go forward. And we come now, we have 9 minutes left. I think we can look now still at agenda item 30, which is on songbird trade and conservation management. And I think we will have to postpone the remaining issues, which are not that many, to Thursday's meeting. I don't think we can wrap them up in 15 minutes. So I'm afraid we will have to meet again on Thursday. So songbird trade and conservation management. Document AC31, Doc 30, and its addendum was prepared by the Secretariat and notes that Decision 18256 could not be implemented due to lack of external funding, but draws attention to 2 reviews which were submitted by Species 360 and are available as documents AC31 INF 11 and AC31 INF 12. One is a standardized dataset for conservation prioritization of songbirds to support CITES songbird decisions, and supplementary files on songbirds, passeriformes. It is noted that the information in these documents will be relevant to songbird trade and conservation management, and can inform the basis of the study and technical workshop envisaged under Decision 18256. The committee is invited to consider proposing the renewal of the decisions on songbirds at COP19 if the current lack of funding persists. In the event that funding becomes available to conduct the study and hold the technical workshop, I propose that the Animals Committee requests that the Secretariat propose amended decisions in consultation with the chair of the Animals Committee to reflect any progress made to COP19. So that's what I would propose forward, and I open the floor for any comments. I see the United States. United States, Rosemary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The United States would like to thank the CITES Secretariat for their work towards implementing Decision 18.256 related to the songbird trade. As a co-sponsor of COP18 Document 79, the United States strongly supported the implementations of Decisions 18.256 to 18.259 on songbird trade and conservation management, as we are very concerned about the illegal, unsustainable legal trade in songbirds, resulting in global declines of songbird populations, many at dramatically rapid rates. However, given that the Secretariat has been unable to initiate all of the work called for in Decision 18.256, the United States believes that the 4 decisions should be extended to the next intersessional period between COP19 and COP20. While recognizing the challenges associated with undertaking significant work related to non-CITES listed species, the U.S. believes that this is an important conservation issue, as indicated by the recent seizure of nearly 6,000 songbirds in Indonesia, as well as 2 recent U.S. seizures of finches from Guyana, and will continue to work to ensure that progress is being made towards implementation of the 4 decisions. The United States is pleased to announce that it will provide some funds to the CITES Secretariat for a study of the songbird trade in the Western Hemisphere. We advise that the U.S. funds should be used to address the trade in and conservation of songbirds in the Western Hemisphere, particularly focusing on Latin America and the Caribbean. In directing the expenditure of the U.S. excess of U.S. funds, we note that most of the work on trade in songbirds has been focused on Asia, but there are significant information gaps for Central and South America and the Caribbean, as well as Africa. We further note that the songbird trade in the Western Hemisphere can find its way into Mexico, Canada, and the United States, as evidenced by these recent U.S. seizures. And so we believe it is important to focus the U.S. funds when we provide them on the Western Hemisphere. With this financial support towards implementation of Decision 18.256, the U.S. hopes we can continue to explore opportunities, collect data and information to support these decisions, and therefore we recommend their continuation. And we welcome the views from the committee on the way forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, United States. And thank you very much for your kind offer. Again, it's very helpful and helps us advance on this issue. I see HSI who has asked for the floor. HSI, you have the floor.
Fully support the statement made by the United States, and we point out that this is a developing issue in terms of our knowledge, that there are a number of species. There's a very, very large domestic trade in many of these songbirds, and some of them, they felt like, well, the trade is mostly domestic, but CITES can't do very much. But we're now finding that some of these species are showing up increasingly in international trade, and this wasn't known before. So the list of species that could come under CITES purview is growing. For instance, there was a recent paper published, in fact, just this year, on the Sumatran laughing thrush, Garrulax bicolor, which is a highly endangered species that was thought to be almost entirely an national trade, within Indonesia, but is now known to be being traded domestically with birds showing, or internationally, I should say, my apologies, with birds showing up in Europe. So we do support the ongoing examination of unlisted species with the eye to the fact that more and more of these species may be identified as having an international trade component that we didn't know about or didn't have details on before. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, HSI. I see one final short statement because I have to wrap up. WCS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I promise I will be very brief. WCS is highly concerned by the serious decline in songbirds and the threats posed by international trade in these species. We greatly appreciate the support of the United States for work on the issue in the Western Hemisphere and encourage support of donor parties for work in other regions. It's also very important when looking at trade to not only look at trade in CITES species, but in all songbirds. We support extending the mandate of the decisions and look forward to working with the parties and the Animals Committee on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, WCS. I think this concludes this item as well. So the Animals Committee recommends the extension of the 4 decisions. And I would ask the Secretary to include text of these renewed decisions in the executive summary so that everyone can have a look at them, that they are also documented. So with this, I thank everyone. We have made huge steps, not quite enough to finish today. So we have some remaining outstanding issues, but I think we should get through to them on Thursday. So as much as I know, we will start with the Animals Committee at 12:30 on Thursday. So looking forward to see you again in 2 days' time. And thank you everyone for your patience and for your contributions. Secretary, did you want to have some final remarks?
Not necessarily, Mr. Chairman, just to again thank the United States for supporting our work on songbirds, and I fully understand the need to prioritize, and the regional priorities they actually advanced are very, very interesting and very needed. Other than that, we will continue to show on the top of our webpage. If you look at the AC31, where you can find the agenda documents, on the top of that page, you will see which items we still will follow. We'll work on Thursday in the sequence that you're gonna take them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Secretariat. Thank you to the interpreters already now. I will repeat it at the end, of course, but still, thank you very much for your support. And we will meet again on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. So thank you very much.